That was, of course, Delta Goodrem. This is not me. The time is nearly 5:10 here on the Get You Home show with me, yours truly, Andy B. And I am joined by a very lovely chap named Julian. Hello, Julian.
Good evening. Nice to see you.
When this goes out onto YouTube later on in a few days or whenever it is it goes over there, people will be looking, thinking, well, this is interesting. Have they got something wrong? Why is there a picture of Santa Claus? It's the middle of January. So shall we start with the obviousness of what's behind you, which I can see, but nobody else can yet?
Well, my little pitch for that is because I do a lot of networking and people do ask the same question, where I say, I'm Julian with the gift of appointment setting. Santa knows how hard it is to reach the right people and get in front of key decision makers. It's not nice being blocked by gatekeepers, leaving you frustrated with zero appointments. You avoid the phone altogether, paralyzed by the fear of rejection. Let's have a chat in the grotto and turn things around. That was my pitch before Christmas, but sadly, Father Christmas and a lot of the engagements I had didn't happen because I caught pneumonia and pleurisy. So happy New Year.
Yeah, that was, I didn't have pneumonia, but I did have a chest infection, a real bad one, 5 or 6 years ago. And that was hospital, that was A&E, not good. Very nasty infection that had caught root in my lungs for whatever reason. So, yes, I can definitely understand some of that to a degree. But when you've got something to do, the frustration builds, doesn't it?
Well, it certainly does, yeah. And it's a real tester. Because, as you know, when you're with family or close friends, they see the real person. And sometimes it's not always great to be claiming to be a Christian and suddenly coming out with happy, joyful, bouncy Christian attitude at 24/7. So it's been a test, but a good one to look into the mirror on and improve on areas where I could be better.
Let's just do a little bit more. Now, what is it that you do? I mean, okay, we're talking about Santa. You've sort of hinted at in some of your things, because I know something of what you do. But for folk listening, what is it that you actually do where Santa can be helpful?
Well, obviously, to be honest with you, this happened 3 or 4 years ago when COVID struck and all that time. And I thought, what am I going to do around the Christmas time? And my sister kindly put me forward for a position. And since then, I've been doing Santa roles, and I absolutely love it. And I guess being in that position, there's a lot of guys that run away from positions like this, particularly with children. But because I'm passionate about the welfare of kids and vulnerable adults, which I'll come on to in a second, I thought, well, let's just be that role. Let's be the Christ-like role underneath the Santa appearance, to be honest. Because I have to say, I'd probably get more fun of it than kids do. But, you know, when they come up with their little presents and gifts and requests, it's a privilege to do it. So I absolutely love doing it. Yeah. So Santa's one role, yeah, which I do. But also I'm involved with an organization called Kingdom Living. We're doing building affordable homes and transforming communities. That's the intent. We're in a good place at the moment. So that's another area. I'm a kind of broker like that. I'm also passionate about safeguarding, and I do a lot of networking in that space because having gone to a particular school and had some interesting experiences with the church, I find myself now in a position to try and be of use to those where people go quiet sometimes in church, where maybe they're too frightened to talk to the minister or go for therapy or anything like that. So I feel I'm in a position where hopefully if anybody's listening here, it'll be a blessing to them that I see things from a different angle, don't always fit in everywhere, but try and follow this Jesus as much as I can and try and get things right, but learning along the way.
I did once upon a time play Santa for, it was Sure Start. I don't know if you remember those. They were like community driven, government funded centres, often in sort of deprived areas or near to that. And I was in one in Shropshire. And this is all. You're the only dad, because I was a stay-at-home dad. You're the only man. We need you to be Santa, because there's no other blokes. So I was Santa. And I've got to be honest, I really struggled. I love kids. I've worked in churches full-time with children. I love being around children. I found being Father Christmas for an hour or whatever it was one of the most stressful moments in my life, because I found that it was the grandparents that wanted the photo more than perhaps the mother or the child. I'm curious about your thoughts on this. I loved it some of the children got so much from it, but some of them were just terrified because there's this weird bloke in a beard they don't know.
Yeah, and there are a fair percentage that either cry at the doorstep, but I'm a bit of a child myself, really, because I kind of try and look at the child, look at the parents, set the scene, because everybody's a bit different. Because you get people running towards you, the whole family, and they say, "Come on, Santa, we love you." Jump on your knee, all sorts of stuff. And it was a privilege 3 years ago where these parents brought in a 15-day-old baby.
Wow.
I thought, this is good as it gets, and I thought, this little face looking at me, could he hold it? It's like a minister being given a baby for baptism or christening, and I just thought, look at that. I mean, the beauty of the little face, little blue eyes. It reduces you to tears sometimes because of the preciousness and the vulnerability. But I always gauge the mothers, the dads, bring them all in together, and because it's their little time. There's a lot of kids, come from single parent charities, all sorts of stuff, parenting alone, and it's just a joy to give them a little burst of magic. Um, Interestingly, one little child came very bright in Chelsea once came in and said, "Where's Jesus?" And of course, you have to be open to everybody. And of course, Santa was challenged on that, but Santa looked back and went, "You've made a very good point there, but
Mm.
we have a job to do here, and but perhaps we can have a chat about that later or something." But it is what it is. But I tell you what, the magic of Christmas is beautiful. But certainly from where I'm sitting, I'm thinking, what would Christ be in this situation? So I try and factor that into my delivery, if I'm honest. Yeah.
I know when we did a Christmas service, and there were some folk I was working for Church of England, and some folks said, "Oh, Christmas, it's disgusting, terrible. How dare you? It's not in the Bible." And I remember having a conversation because the minister where I was, he was very pro Christmas. What an amazing opportunity! We were very much the same. What a fantastic opportunity! It's one of maybe two occasions of a year, other than funerals, when people want. They desire to come to church. They're seeking something. What a perfect moment to actually give them the gospel. All my vicar said to me was, when you speak on the Christingle that I did, give them the gospel. I don't care what else you do. That's the one thing they need more than everything else. But we also had a brass band. We had candles. We had a Christingle orange. We had some silliness going on. We had chocolates being thrown out. Because for me personally, what a wonderful time of year when people actually desire to come into our church buildings and say, "Look, I want to know about Christmas." It's such a precious, wonderful time.
That's a big subject. You need about 3 hours on that one. From what
Well,
you've just said, you said, if we're in court now, you said, give them the gospel.
yeah.
Now, I understand having hung around in various establishments and places, but I think we've got to be careful with the language and the
Mm.
spirit behind what we're saying, because I have to say, my father, amazing man, he was a minister. Grandfather was my uncle. Uh, Dad didn't go around banging on about the gospel.
Mm.
He actually walked and taught the gospel without saying too much. And I think sometimes, we miss a trick. Yes, it's sad that a lot of churches have congregations only turning up to Christmas and Easter and all these big celebrations and the marriages and stuff. And it's frustrating for a minister. Of course it is, because the numbers suddenly drop until you need me or get you into a school.
Mm.
But I just think that ministers and ministry people could be clever on that. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I worked for a very sensitive charity that dealt with parents who died and the kids were left alone and they had no one to turn to. And I said to the chair, I said, you're a Christian and stuff. How is it that you don't put much bits and pieces about the Christian and faith on your site? But there's a particular reason for that. She said, people come to that, they feel Jesus, they sense Jesus, and some of them end up working for us. And I just thought to myself, we're missing out on that, because I think sometimes within social media and in a lot of Christian environments, there's this sort of noise, numbers, come on. It puts a lot of pressure on Christians to suddenly convert everybody. But to be honest with you, I've had to pull away from certain places because it's too stressful. It doesn't feel inherently right. Yes, I think both sides, evangelism and Anglo-Catholic style, they could learn a lot from each other, but it shouldn't be a race. God knows. If he knows every hair on our head and every thought on our hearts, well, let's just work with that and then go from there.
Which is what we did. We took the Christingle orange. We looked at the origins. I mean, I'll be honest. I was working full time for a church. I didn't know what a Christingle was. Literally no clue. Vicar said, "Right, you're leading a Christingle." We were employed by the church. I didn't know. Went off and looked at Google and what's a Christingle. Looked at the original. Why is there a Christingle service? And it was a guy in Germany, Reinhard Newbold, who came up with this Christingle orange as a way of explaining what Christianity is all about in really simple ways. So we worked through that, and it was great. I really enjoyed it because I like keeping things simple, pure. You know, we don't bang on about God all the time. That's not what we're here to try and do. We play music that's free of bad language. That's what we do because we have a heart and passion for music. People say, "Oh, do you play Christian music?" No, we play music. Some of those artists might describe themselves as Christians. Some of them might not. And I don't really care. It's about the music. We're a music-based radio station. And you do need to remember to stick to what it is you're trying to do. And for us, for all of our presenters, we're a music radio station. It's the music that matters. And some people get a bit funny about that, I think, in churches. Well, you know, you should only play worship music, and we never play worship music. We have a slot on a Sunday morning for it, or midweek worship on a Wednesday, but actually we're here to play music because it's powerful and it's life-changing.
Well, as I said, I commented on one. I was expecting a whole lot of Christian music, banjos. There's a burning in my heart. I'm thinking, oh, dear, this is going to be tough. But then I heard one of the songs before, and I thought, I love that one, which I asked you the question on. And I think sometimes we need to stay in our lane. And don't forget, people buy people, not the product. I was only talking to a family yesterday who's challenged me to come up with 3 words in this delivery. So if I say something, I'll do it. And can I just get this bit out of the way so that I can feel a bit easier? Life can feel like being a lab rat, constantly tested, watched, and pushed. That's the first one. That's out of the way. Sometimes you're carrying a doggy poo bag. Hope that's not too rude. Things you never asked for, but still have to deal with. And the third one is, and sometimes you glimpse an Eiffel Tower moment, beauty, perspective, and hope that reminds you there's more. I think from all this humble experience I've got in the Christian space and learning a lot, listening a lot, being cajoled and, you know, steered in certain ways, I think that it's the stuff that you don't want to talk about, which needs to be ministered into, and deliverance and all that other stuff. A lot of people are hiding behind the wall, looking over. You know, it's a temptation to go to church, isn't it, and say things and, oh yeah, very nice, pray for the right people, look the part. But what's your heart doing? Are you prepared? Are you going in there with the humility that Christ is asking of us? So that's the area, but you've got to have fun with it. You know, Dad was great. He used to say to couples sometimes, he said, "What are you married to him for?" Now, in certain churches circles, right? Exactly, you laugh. In some circles, they say, "Oh my gosh, is the Holy Spirit really working through him?" You know, it's ridiculous. And isn't it funny? Dad rose to very senior ranks within the Royal Army Chaplains Department. Learned a lot from that man, and I hope he's listening now.
Yeah, I was gonna say we want to project a good image, not just as Christians, but as people generally. We want people to see the good side of us. We don't want them to see the side of us when someone's cut us up in the traffic and our language is not great. Yeah. We get aggressive, the red mist comes down. That's not the Facebook moment that you want to share with everybody in the world. Actually, it's a moment when you were happy and kind of, look, I let this person in, aren't I good? Because of course that's normal. But, and I found this, there are people who I have been able to talk with, and some of the greatest help I've either given to people or had from others is all around the weakness, which is absolutely true. And I shared this last week with a few folk at a conference I was at, the importance of actually being not just honest, but actually being willing to sort of lean into some of the pain in your life, not in a look at me, I want sympathy way, but you know, I've been through some hardships. When we had a miscarriage many, many years ago, it was one of the most difficult times in my life. People who reached out to me who'd never had a miscarriage, they could be sympathetic to a point. But then there was one couple that came along, 40 years older than us. We had a miscarriage many years ago, and they just sat and cried with us. That was all they did. One of the most healing times. But others who haven't necessarily been through that particular experience, they were sympathetic to a degree, but it's very hard to fully align yourself to someone. But when the weakness is allowed to come out, when the things you don't do so well at suddenly becomes part of who you are in reality, it's amazing the help that you can offer to others, or vice versa.
Doubt, trauma, anger, and questions don't mean weak faith.
Mm,
Silence doesn't heal. Honest connection does. Fellowship is key. Real connection, not performance or pretending. It's okay to be not okay. It's okay to actually say, sorry, I've messed up there. Please forgive me. I don't think, and the spiritual dynamics that are going, we never really talk about that stuff. And there's a lot of performance led stuff. And here's some scripture, off you go. I think, I mean, if Jesus came now, I'd like to feel Jesus was actually saying, well, the question in Matthew, I think it said something like, I get behind me, I never knew you. I mean, there's a lot of references that could be regarded in certain circles as negative. Oh, we don't want to hear that from Jesus.
mm.
And that's a tough call, isn't it? I mean, how anybody can say, oh, yes, I'm fine. Yes, I'm so well connected. We've got the money, we've got the experience, the car and everything. And we've got the family. Yeah, yeah, we're right up there with the minister. But I think Christ is looking for something else, particularly through all the hardship we're all going through at the moment. Strip away what you've got and actually think to yourself, well, hang on, have I been nasty? Have I been cruel? Say sorry. Or go the extra mile. I do a lot of appointment setting, right? And I encourage and coach situations where I'd say, do the call you don't want to do first thing in the morning, right? Because that could actually dictate how the rhythm for your day. If you're still thinking, oh yeah, but if you've already decided what they're going to say, but surprise yourself, right? And I think be different, be yourself, be authentic. Because I think sometimes I've done this before. You think, well, hang on, no, I've been told by this learned minister with degrees and legal background and stuff. I'm thinking, have I got something wrong? But no, all people are asking you to be yourself and and weave it into God rather than actually into mammon and people. I think there's this tendency to do that. And I think I've watched a lot of big stations with these global performances, and sometimes it really does, it jars with my spirit, to be honest. I think sometimes I flick in there and I get inspired, but I have to say, we've got to be careful about coming under that man-made or woman-made delivery, which sometimes can get away from the actual person we're meant to be worshipping.
One of the things I love when people come and talk to us about our radio station, so I was listening to whichever presenter, they're really normal. I love how normal they are, because that's a big passion of mine, because you can project and you can lie and you can fake, but it's really hard and it's tiring, and I haven't got the time for that. I don't have the capacity. I much prefer to be who I am. It's easier. It's who I am right now. And I like the fact that the people that I do meet, conferences, festivals, what have you, they say, oh, you're exactly who we thought you were. Which, to be honest, that's the greatest compliment I think I'm happy to have ever, because I'm not trying to project anything I'm not. I've shared this story many times. I don't, not going to apologize for that. But I was doing an all-age service in the church, big church. We had 600-700 people every month coming for infant baptism. It was one of my responsibilities. And I love the fact that one of the services, I would always start the service with a very, very big, old-fashioned classic hymn. We would then go into a welcome, and the very first thing we would do next is Silly Songs with Andy. That'll be me. And we'd do a song. So often it went wrong, never ever scripted those mistakes, but those mistakes, not intentional, always sort of broke the ice. And one day the minister was sat behind this family in the church. We used to have like 3 families, never been to church before. And they said, I didn't know Christians were allowed to have fun. These church folk are actually laughing. I didn't know that was allowed. I mean, what a sad indictment of the church that people are actually saying, I didn't know Christians could have fun.
I will lift up mine eyes onto the hills. I was a chorister. Sadly, we had some dodgy choir masters. That's another story, which has led me into the safeguarding space, which eventually you end up trying to seek help from the very Church of England, which, as you know, is in a right crisis at the moment with regard to safeguarding. Won't bang on about that, but what I will say is I've met some amazing people from all sorts of backgrounds, faith. There's this pressure to think, no, but are you a Christian? Are you a Christian? I don't feel it's right and appropriate for me to start bullying the heck out of them to demand the only reason I'm going to talk to you is unless you're Christian. Of course, Christian values, Christian spirit, there's a different conversation. There's a spirit going on. I get that. But I have to say, I'll call out some amazing people who claim to be not Christian, who have actually been more Christian to me and helped me. And I'd like to think, well, hang on, Lord, if you're dishing out the sheep and goats and bits and pieces like that, I mean, they would probably go further ahead rather than me, to be honest, and in the queue. So I think we've got to be careful. And I think this phrase from Matthew, "Get away from me, I never knew you," is quite chilling, actually. I know we're meant to be positive. Oh, my life with God. Oh, I'm so looking forward to seeing God and Jesus. But really, are we? Have we got it right? Have we said sorry to people? Have we gone the extra mile? Have we ignored the people that we should be paying attention to? Because time and time again, Dad used to remind us as a family, think of the others, think of others. It's really hard because you think, oh, I'm a minister's kid. You go to the lavatory at different times or eat different food and stuff like that. But as you say, Andy, I totally get what you're saying about, oh, you better have fun. I mean, sometimes it wasn't fun, but here I am looking after my mother, who's a dear person to me, and they've done a lot for me. So it's payback time in the years that we've got left together. So as a family, we're really passionate about love and support and truth, but truth and justice, wherever it is, I think God's got her eye on it.
I want to come back to the safeguarding thing, which is interesting. You were talking about faith quite a lot in your own life. Where did faith begin for you to be something that was very personal?
Well, it's funny because I joined the police. Well, not funny. I was in the police for 6.5 years, right? Hilarious. And I suppose I joined the police fearing God because I'm thinking to myself, I had a fear of God actually doing the wrong thing or right thing. And I thought, if I do X, I'll be off to the flames. And in many ways, still, those flames tend to tinge you at times, even now. But I have to say that I went out with someone. I went to HDB, to be fair. I was grateful for them because there was a call to come to the altar. And I thought, no, there's no way I'm going. People might know me here. I'm not weak in all this stuff. And I did a deal with God. And I said, look, to be honest, dear, I'm not really, I don't want to go up, but I'll stand here, but I'll put my hands out. And I did. And this massive bolt of lightning came through my head. I can't get away from it. I wish that didn't happen, to be honest. But I have to say, still to this day, I think, what the heck was that? But I knew something had happened. There was an exchange there. And even when I talk about it, I get a little shiver in my legs. And I think when something personal like that happens, you can't ignore that. And that led me on to, doing a lot of children's work and groups. You learn a lot because no one's got all the answers. And so I was grateful for that. Peeled away later. But then I started thinking, I've got to create some space for people who've got questions. So I ended up organizing nested networking events, space, truth, empowerment debate. I organized about 18 debates on things like gay ministry, Freemasonry, honor killings. I tell you, you dig deep. There's some amazing speakers out there. And I owe a lot to the lovely Mike Palmer Fry and his wife Dot, who was the chair of the debates. He was absolutely amazing. He was just great with people. So people could, when you can ask a question and feel safe. I remember there's a gay guy at the back. He said, "Oh God, you heterosexual, you haven't got a clue what we get up to, right?" But I'll tell you what, the most vocal people in those debates would end up hugging people like Mike, saying, "I need some therapy, help." And I'm just wondering how many people reach out to their minister, say, "Oh, I love you to bits. Thank you so much. The spirit is really moving. Can I just be open and honest with you?" And of course, they've got time to deal with everybody. But I think this is where it's important as a family. So getting back to the question, it's an ongoing process, but the more stuff that's happened in my life and the more engagement and the more battles I'm having with the church, even to this day, it's actually forcing me to increase my faith because the older I'm getting, I'm suddenly thinking, well, hang on, God, that doesn't seem right, this business. But I'm grateful for that early sort of understanding, but it's increased through a maverick way. I don't jump up and down in churches these days or anything like that. I've kind of learnt a lot, but I think sometimes in the quiet, when we're encouraged to go into our room and pray, that's where probably God's at. So I'm trying a bit of that for once. And before Dad died, I said, Dad, you're a really hard act to follow. And he said, don't follow me, follow Jesus. So I'm doing as I'm told for once.
Good man. But it's so true though. I've met some parents like, how do I get my children to go to church? And I just said, well, get them to meet Jesus. Don't try and force them into a church that might be right or wrong for them in that particular context, or a different one might be better. But don't try and get your children to come to your church. That's not the right approach. You need to introduce them to Jesus, because that's the relationship that's going to last. That's the one you want to build, because this church can disappear. Just driven past another church the other day, up for sale, no longer used. Churches do come and go. But of course, Christianity is much bigger than a building or even a collection of buildings. Yeah, I've spoken to quite a few parents over the years and said, look, don't try and force your kids to come to church, which is usually their question. How do I trick them in? No, this is the wrong question. How do I introduce them to Jesus will be a much better thing, and live by example.
Well, I saw after a church service at a very kind of high-end evangelical place in London, I went to this kind of private members club, and they had lovely Sunday roasts and all that stuff going. I was invited. And I remember the father was a city person. I thought kind of passive aggressive, if I'm honest, but regarded as a wonderful Christian. Good man, they say. But I remember this kid walked past, grabbing his kid, in the name of Jesus, I bless you, I cover you, and all this stuff. Now, was that really for the benefit of the child, or was it the benefit of him impressing supposedly the little congregation of people around the table? That for me needs to be called out. It's aggressive Christianity. With those kids thing, I would get kids if it was me. I would actually do nothing and say to the kids, look, could you give us reasons why you don't want to go? Go the opposite way. Why don't you want to go to church? Could you do a little play on why you don't want to go to church? Just turn it around. And I think to myself, kids aren't stupid. And from a very young age, they kind of know who they want to hang around with. And even there are grown-up kids now who are in a childlike state from the trauma from the past. And I know this from abuse and all that sort of stuff. I'm just wondering, it's not just the kids, it's adults that are still kids spiritually who haven't really dealt with their trauma. And I find this a lot with people. I mean, I get a lot of people confessing they're Freemasons for some reason, because I've been on some deliverance from Freemasonry. Not that I was a Freemason, but I had a tough time with Freemasons in the police and other players. So I think I'm not blaming anybody here. I'm just saying there's a very active spirit at work, and there's a very dark spirit. And I just think sometimes people think, I didn't feel right about that. But they need to grab onto that, pray about that, and get help with it rather than letting it fester, because that will be the driver for your next day and the weeks ahead.
Let's come on to the safeguarding elements then. You talked a little bit about some of your past in the choir and what have you. Also talked about your passion about Father Christmas and how you can reach children in a good way. So where is safeguarding fitting for you?
Well, it's been a long journey, and I'm still spinning some plates with regards to some outstanding business with the authorities. But where I'm at is that I think I've done a lot of the prepping. A lot of pain, a lot of tears, a lot of joys, a lot of highs. You meet some amazing people. I know one of the people who've gone off to the America thing with the under 16s, the social media stuff. You get to meet people, Esther Ranson, and all I'm saying is that where I'm at with it is that I've learned a lot from the suffering of others. There's some people at one of the schools I went to are too frightened to even talk to the police. You could tell my story, but do not mention my name, one person said. And well, what am I meant to do with that? How does that person deal with that? And everybody needs to be sensitive around that space. So I've learned a lot. Got some great people out there. There's a guy called Mark Brahmer, who's an ex-detective. He's working tirelessly on outstanding cases that the police didn't do too well on. With all that old cop experience, massive into safeguarding, he's raised a new standard through the BSI, which trumps a lot of the existing safeguarding policies. I'm engaged with a broker in insurance to encourage, clients like big organizations to say, if you put a more robust safeguarding policy in place, maybe the insurance company could come up with a more effective plan or cheaper. I mean, there's ways of looking at this. Um, it's not easy because it's stuff you can't really put on your CV. But I find it fascinating that the little voice I had as a 7-year-old was kind of crushed into the sort of private school entitled sort of arena of authority that's out of control. But I'll tell you what, it's like anything that you try and push down, at some point it's going to come up later. So it's come up. So now I've been invited to a diocese to go and, which is a huge privilege. It's a bit of a risk for them, but no, it's respect. It's not slagging off anybody or, if that's the appropriate word, or slating. It's more about using the experience to try and educate people to try and engage in a better way with people. You know, it's like people have gone to for help from bishops and places like that. Oh, you're in our thoughts and prayers. There. You know, it's like the civil servants and the lawyers and the insurers. They're the ones who dictate how things should be. But it's like I've always described it like getting to the end of the yellow brick road, tearing the curtain back, and being completely disappointed and seeing some monster talking into a microphone. It's like that, and it's chilling. I just think we need to do better, to be kinder, and to go the extra mile and create space for grace so both sides can move on.
I guess, I mean, I've spoken to people in safeguarding in different contexts, but one of the things, of course, which feeds back to where we started the conversation is we want to project a really good image. We don't want people to see the bad stuff. We don't want people to think. I remember at a school, the teacher said, "We never have bullying in this school." I actually laughed at her. I said, "Every school has bullying. That's kind of human nature. Not good. We shouldn't accept it." But you saying there is no bullying in a school of 500 children, it's just farcical. It's nonsense. It's cloud cuckoo land. Like, there is bullying in a school. We know there is because our child was being bullied. No, we have none. Because, of course, she wants to project a good image of the school. And we don't want to consider the unpleasantness. But actually, if we don't, then people end up having to bury their emotions and their feelings and their experiences. And that never ends well.
Well, the school I went to, where a lot of this happened, teachers and older people, I ended up, because they weren't quite getting the message, because I was privy to a lot of emails from people who didn't quite sort of have a great time there. And the same sort of characters would come up in terms of the abusers, their names. And I got banned from Friends Reunited. And I had to appeal to say, why are you banning me? Just because it's inconvenient for the school and stuff like that, that's church related and stuff. And anyway, long story short, I ended up campaigning outside the school with a massive sign saying, "Is your child safe?" And the joke was, on the open day, the parents coming in, showing their kids around, thought I was part of the open day. So they missed the whole point. This is where we miss things. I said, just read the leaflet, read the leaflet. Don't ask the head, how far is Johnny going to throw the javelin? Or are you going to feed him through Eton and Harrow and Winchester and all the other people? Ask, if my child gets attacked, will you report it to the local authority designated officer? And that didn't go down too well. I literally got run over by the head of the Parent Teachers Association, got out really aggressive. He said, "We'll call the police." And I said, "No, the police are coming. This is a peaceful protest. And you know why I'm here." You see, when you try and all those brochures that a lot of these top private schools give out, there's no mention of anything about bullying. Of course there isn't. I mean, you're not going to get a right-hand page of your kid's head being kicked, all thumped and screaming, all that stuff. No, none of that. But maybe they should have. This is where we've fallen short in the past. Maybe that's a good thing. We've cleaned up our image. We are so much better now. But don't hide behind the lawyers and insurers to save you, because it will come and bite you later, which it is doing now. Having said that, there was a new change of head or headship and stuff. And it was amazing because there was one particular person who was ex-police, who was extremely grateful for. He listened and he said, that shouldn't have happened. And I just think sometimes the words, people are petrified from the institutions to actually say, "Oh, we're wrong because we're liable and now we'll go and sue you and stuff." But having said that, not all survive. They just want to be treated with a bit of respect to say, "Look, we've heard your story. We're sorry. How can we help you move on?" Particularly if they're a Christian school, which part of the Bible are they missing in terms of their instruction, not just to their current people, but also the people who've put a lot of money into their bricks over the years?
Let's move on to what you're doing now. Now, Christians in Media, of course, we met there, Sky Group HQ in London, which was a brilliant day with Christians in Media. We had an absolute blast. You met some fantastic people. Some people I would love to have met didn't have the time, which is actually a really good sign of a good day. Why were you at that particular conference?
Well, it's interesting because I saw it flash up in the media, and I thought to myself, like we all do, think, well, I wouldn't fit in there. I get enough reasons. No, it's not. But I was intrigued, and I thought, well, why not just go face the fear and do it anyway, right? And I did, and I thought everybody was so nice. Met a guy, the Craig, who was on who's that American film chap. We had a good chat. Yeah, Craig Forrest. We had a good chat. Read his book, and other people. And I thought to myself, hang on, there's sure these Christians here, amazing. And I just felt really welcomed. It was a lovely lunch. And meeting you guys, I just felt at peace there, which is quite rare actually in certain Christian places, particularly once going through all the things. And then I heard all the speakers. That was interesting. And when you get challenged, that's good as well, because you're not going to like everybody and think, oh, I absolutely agree just because you're a Christian. But I just think it's in those lovely sofas and the Sky to create that space for that grace. I think good on them.
Me share a story I heard literally last week from Canon J. John. He was talking about how we can hear a talk, a sermon, a preacher, a network event, whatever it is, and we can sit and listen. And I think some people, they just think, well, I want to agree with everything. Oh, I don't agree with everything they say. And they have to say this, like, well, of course you don't. What a redundant statement. I heard them, but I don't agree with everything. Well, no, because you're not them. But J. John, it's a brilliant bit of wisdom. He said, look, it's like meat, chicken, and it's about fish. If you eat a piece of meat, you can eat, cut up the chicken, you can eat the chicken, it's no problem. When it comes to the fish, you have to scrape the skin off, you have to take the bones out, put them to one side so you can get to the fish. And there's sometimes things you want to pick a bone with somebody, but just leave the bones to the side, concentrate on the meat. He said it far more articulately. Of course he did. But I just think it's fascinating how so often, I mean, I follow all sorts of people, some of whom I like and some I don't like, but I like to know what's going on in lots of context. So I'm following all sorts of people. But there are those that will say, oh, well, I follow them, but I don't like everything they say. Well, no, of course you don't, because we're not supposed to agree with everybody, but some of those challenges can be really good, makes us think about what we think.
Well, exactly. And I think that there's a lot of survivors of abuse within the church who are not Christians anymore, who've chosen, no, I'm not interested, which is heartbreaking, really, because I mean, I've chosen to keep following Jesus the best way I can. I don't always get it right, probably never will. But how sad it is that there's no capacity from senior leadership within the Church of England that would reach out in the heart of Christ, despite all that, and hiding behind a wall of administration, and go the extra mile. Because, my gosh, if survivors and those people out there who've been rejected by ministries and other people because it's inconvenient, oh, that's a problem. Well, Jesus is watching, and they're not a problem to him, allegedly, right? So I would encourage anybody in leadership who's not picking those bones, which you mentioned, who's not looking at the real skeleton behind the person, who's not bothered to actually ask any questions because it's too much grief for them. Oh, it's too much work. It's a problem. Well, you want to start checking your heart on that and checking the bits on the Bible which you might have missed, because Christ is interested in them, and I think we should be interested in them, because you never know. If you transform one of those little people on big people, maybe they might go on to do some amazing things. So get away from me, I never knew you is quite an interesting line within this amazing book they call the Bible.
We are coming towards the end of the time that we've got today. Let's just come on to julianwhiting.co.uk, which is at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Just tell us more about specifically what people might be able to find on there.
Yeah, not too much, to be honest, but it's more about engagement, because a lot of people struggle to get hold of people. And I thought I'd use the Santa thing. I was encouraged by another networker to say, got the gift of appointment setting. What you'll find there is an opportunity to engage with me if I can help in any way, I love problems. I love dealing with problems, having served in the police for 6.5 years and engaging with a lot of people in safeguarding. If you're in business, I do a lot of appointment setting, and I love doing it in maverick ways, different ways of engagement, rather than just, hello, could you speak to such and such, please? It's not like that. This is about tone, listening, delivery, And so you can get in touch with me there. It's a little site that another Christian guy put together called Scott. Really nice of him to do that. Yeah, and just want to encourage people to just reach out to those you don't want to reach out to. Try that. Say thank you for people that have referred things to you, and just go the extra mile. And when it gets tough, just lean into the Christ, because we have so much else to do, and say sorry when you know you should do.
I've shared this story before as well, but it seems to be relevant right now, very much so. I worked for a car auction in the UK, big chain, many years ago, nearly 30 years ago. And one of my jobs was car stereos. When the cars come in, some part of the stereo would come out as a car was sold. I would then put it back into the car so it wasn't stolen. One set of cars bought by a guy up in Scotland. He went back to Scotland. The cars then followed him on a transporter. And he said, could you please send me this particular radio front really quickly, because I've sold the car. And literally, as soon as that truck gets in and getting the car off, it's going to be a really fast valet and off to the customer. I really need that radio front. Can you please tell me if you can get it to me? And if you can, get it to me. I rang in the very next afternoon and said, look, I cannot find it. I'm really sorry. We don't have it. I can't send it to you. He actually wrote to the senior branch manager, one of the directors, and saying, look, this guy failed to do something, but I wanted to say thank you because he said he couldn't do something. And that's all I wanted. He couldn't do it, so I had another fix in place. But how many people actually would do that? So I had a little letter on the wall in the office. Because I didn't do something, I got a letter of commendation, which has amused me for the last 30 years. But how often do we try and make promises that we fail? But I think most of us, we just want to, if you can help us, can you help us? And if you can't, can you just say so? And perhaps we can go and find someone who can.
Well, exactly. I mean, there's so many people that I'm really grateful for. People like Jonathan Hosker, who's an architect, Christian. Two to lots of Tony Hodges, one for making me really think. Tony Hodges from City Vision, and then Tony Hodges, a kind of Christian counselor. These are amazing people. There's never any fuss when you phone up. Naz, who looks after City Vision. Once you connect with people and just be real with them, I think stuff starts to happen. Andrew Cousins, amazing coach up in Knaresborough. Andrew Cousins doing a course called K90, 3 months of Christian stuff for 3 months, getting you in line to really challenge your heart and spirit and putting the gospel in the heart of business. They're amazing, but I wouldn't even dreamed of knowing these people. But I suppose it took me to a point where I think I've had enough, Lord. I give it over to you. I think that's the time when things start to show up, because a bit of humility, humbleness can go a long way.
I think it goes an awfully long way, and I think we need more humility in the world. I really, really do. I think just the simple act of saying thank you it's not overrated. It's not cliche at all. But actually being honest and I'm sorry I've done this, or being thankful, it goes a long way. People come and see us at wherever, festival, at a conference. Thank you for what you did. Conference last week, 9 people came to speak to me after I shared about Pure Radio. Put their hand on my arm or my shoulder and said, thank you for what you're doing with, bad language free radio. And it makes my world, and I can share that back with other people. And it does make a big difference when you say thank you, or sorry, or whatever. But the other one is, can I help you? Here's one for you. I remember in the past, someone said, how are you doing? I'm doing really badly at the moment. I was really honest, very vulnerable. I'm really, really doing badly right now. Oh, fantastic. On you go then. We're going to ask a question.
Yeah.
We've got to be willing for the answer and be willing for it to cost us to help with that answer.
Yeah. And what great movies there are, like Taxi Driver, Stuart Lee, the comedian. They hold the court, because you know why they do that? Because they'll say, really? Really? And that's where the heart is. You're thinking, oh, panic, what do I do? How do I fill in that bit now? But anyway, I just wanted to raise up and love my family, love mum downstairs. And, I just want to say, guys, just put in a bit of NLP in your head. When it going gets tough, just think of something wonderful. Think of a smell, think of Christ, think of the nothingness. Just get into that space and try and distract yourself from going down one way. Keep to the road and say it as it is.
Every Friday on my show, we do things you're thankful for on a Friday because it matters. It's important. And it might be simple as I've got a glass to put some water in. I've got a seat. I've got a floor. We've got to be thankful. And I have thanked God for those things in the past, I can promise you. Because otherwise we get so fixed into what we haven't got, we forget about what we do have. And we've got some amazing supporters and friends and partners in ministry and life and stuff. And it makes a difference when we're thankful, which is why we do that on a Friday, every Friday. Things you're thankful for, because it matters. Julian, thank you. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. I guess Santa Claus, is he sort of asleep now for you for the next 11 months or so?
No, not really. He has to prepare for next year. But Santa, yeah, he's put his clothes away. The spirit's still dangling, but he had to cancel a lot of shows this year. But the spirit of Santa's still there. And I hope some of the kids that ask the difficult questions that happened this year don't come next year, because to be asked, how old are you, Santa? I had to look that up. So you have to wing it stuff. But yeah, it's lovely. But it's been a pleasure spending time with you today. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Julian, thank you. If you want to find out more, go to www.julianwhiting.co.uk and this interview will be out on YouTube and podcast at some point in the near future. Julian, thank you.
Bless you guys, and thank you.
Here at Pure 24/7 Radio, we have had the privilege of speaking to some amazing people with amazing stories.
Now, what about, I thought I'd go a bit further, what about goat and sheep's milk?
Yeah.
Becoming quite popular. Very similar to cow's milk. So we don't use it in the first year of life, you can afterwards. And their nutrient profiles, how good they are, is pretty similar to cow's milk. Allergenicity, how often do they cause allergies? About the same. They're a bit more expensive sometimes. It's pretty equivalent.
Yeah, we're really excited, especially excited for Josh because it's his first book and he's really passionate with that Gen. Do you say Gen Z or Gen Z? I've heard it said in
I don't know. I'm too old. I don't know.
Yeah, we're not in that age category, so we've not got a clue what they're called.
It's a pot boiler. It's a good, exciting popcorn thriller. I didn't think it was anything too special, but I think watching it at home, people will probably enjoy it more than I did going to the cinema to see it. Really good film.
I love it. I walk into a cinema and I turn my phone off. Nobody can get hold of me for a couple of hours. I'm in a completely other world. Every single time I go to the cinema, and for me, it's like going to Oz. It's like going to another world and escaping and relaxing, and I thoroughly enjoy it.
If you have missed any of these interviews or would like to hear them again, you can. Simply head over to our catch-up section at www.pure247radio.org. That's www.pure247radio.org.